Hi, and welcome back to the BA Project, where we talk about the good, the bad, and this week, the international part of business analysis. My name is Drew, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Catherine Moore and Christina Mathieu. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
That's very synchronous of Catherine and I.
It, wasn't
it? The lovely girls.
Eager beavers on a Friday. Love it. This week, we have the absolute pleasure of talking to someone who has made a career out of being a BA on 2 continents across multiple organizations, from small companies to large ones. She is a principal BA, consultant, BA manager. She's also super sound. And she's here to chat to us about what it's like moving to Ireland to kick on in your BA career. That is Miss Soane Campos. Hi, Soane.
Hi, everyone.
Hey,
Hi,
Hey.
Welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much for making the time to chat to us. We appreciate it. So we're going to pick your brain a little bit about BA life in Ireland, on the island of Ireland, from somebody who is not from here. I think it's really interesting perspective because you've built your career somewhere else, far from here in South America. And there's so many people that either have considered moving to Ireland or are in Ireland right now and just starting out their journey here, and they can learn so much. So we were hoping to just pick your brain a little bit, ask a few questions about your experience, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
Sound good? Perfect. So first topic we have for you. We wanted to know, when you moved here, maybe just before you moved here, what was your biggest misconception about your work life here as a BA?
Like, to be completely honest, I thought I would never be able to find a job as a BA here. Really, because back in Brazil, we hear that the industry is growing, IT is growing everywhere. And I knew that the development area here was very strong. Here in Ireland, it had a lot of open positions for development path. But I never heard of other areas, especially BA, and I was never keen on being a developer. So I was like, no, that's not for me. So I never thought I would find a job as a BA here. And that was my first misconception. And the second one was that Irish people would care if I said anything wrong in English. I was very conscious about that. I was going to a country that's completely different from my, homeland. I'm from Brazil. And that kind of like ties back with the first misconception as well, because I thought that if I didn't speak perfect English, then I wouldn't be able to find a job. It was going to be impossible for me. And I couldn't have been more wrong. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. And with other speakers that we've had on the podcast so far, we're seeing this recurrent theme of imposter syndrome, completely unwarranted, because like you, they're all incredible consultants and great in their domain too. And that seems to be coming to light even before you even got here, doubting yourself. That's so interesting. And we know now, absolutely unnecessary. But with you coming over, had you sought out work before you got here? Or were you getting set up here first and then work was the next step?
No. So like before coming here, I always had a look on LinkedIn pages, and the companies here to see what were the kind of experience levels that they were looking for in a BA. And it was funny because every time that I saw a job description, I was like, I do everything that's there. But, in the back of my mind, I was like, no, it's going to be completely different. I won't know to do what I do here. But no, it was not my plan. I didn't apply for any positions when I was back there. My plan was actually to come as an exchange student. So I came with a student visa, and I was studying English here in an English course for 2 years. And during this time, I was like, yeah, no, I want to be here for more than the student visa allows me. And finding a job in IT was the means for it. So that's when I started applying.
It is interesting. It's just my face is frozen. I'm sorry. I promise I'm listening. I'm here. Miraculously, I found a job in IT. I don't know how. That is interesting though, and with LinkedIn we see that all the time, and in our roles as BA leaders, the amount of people that reach out to us outside of the island of Ireland, trying to find work and trying to understand what the process is like. And I think with those people that are moving here and have an aim of finding a BA role here, what would you suggest is better, Soane, to have something lined up before you get here, or to get to Ireland, feel it out, understanding a little bit about the different organizations and how we work? Which do you think is better?
I really think it depends on what you're open to do in terms like professionally, speaking. With myself, I knew that I was coming with my partner at the time, and he's not in IT, and we decided that we're gonna, come together. So, and I wanted to improve my English as well, because I wasn't feeling comfortable with. So I thought that, enrolling in a course and improving my English was the best way of starting this journey. And when I felt a little bit more comfortable about my English, then I started looking for positions for work. So I really think that it depends on what the person is open to do, because in the meantime, that you might work in other jobs that are not really your career that you had back in your home country. So you might work in retail a little bit while you are studying English, while you are looking for jobs in IT. So it really depends on what the person is open to do. But of course, I think it might be a little easier if you start looking for positions when you are in your country, because I think you can plan a little bit better, and you're open to more kind of like negotiate the better position for you in the best company. Whereas if you're already living in a country and you're desperate to find work, you're kind of like you have not much of a room to negotiate. So yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for and what you're open to endure.
It must be so hard to feel the pressure of adapting to a new country that obviously is not in your kind of mother language or whatever. Like, so it must be so hard to try and do both and kind of become accustomed to a country, a culture, the weather, I'm sure, which is a huge impact, and then also a new work. Like it's such a huge pressure when you change jobs. So never mind having to do that across seas. So yeah, it's I think you have to be really kind to yourself if you are undertaking something like that, because it's just so big.
It really is. And I think it's a little bit easier if you find yourself working for a company that already has more people from other countries as well, because they know how to handle, different cultures. And you see people that are in the same situation as yourself, so it's interesting of you to mention, because the first IT company that I worked here in Ireland, it was about, I think 95% of them were all Irish. So I kind of I felt like an outsider a little bit, even though they were super nice to me. They were all nice people. They were very inclusive. But because, I didn't have any other, immigrants to talk about my experiences and, oh my God, how you handle yourself in this particular situation. So I felt a little bit more of an outsider. But yeah, the company that I'm in right now, that I'm working right now, it has so many people from all over the world. So I think it's easier a little bit when you have that kind of support from Irish people and non-Irish as well. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Soane.
It's nice to hear that all the misconceptions come out positive in the end.
Oh yeah.
You would hate to kind of say, well, I had a misconception that Irish people are all friendly, and actually it's
no.
nice. It's nice that it all worked out. It's all positive
Yes,
misconceptions.
it is. They are positive.
Soane also does need to find a job when the podcast is published, so she's keeping us all sweet.
Oh, Jesus.
Thanks so much, Soane. The next topic then we had for you is around day-to-day life here, the practical side of business analysis. I know you guys have had this as well in interviews with people. When people ask you in a BA interview, tell me what your normal day is like, it's so difficult to answer that question because it depends on your project, your customer, your scope, the requirements, the product. It can be wildly different. So I feel a bit guilty asking you this next question, but are you able to tell us a little bit about how BA activities differ here versus at home? And that could be subtle rather than something that's obvious.
No, interestingly enough, like when it comes to projects, when it comes to like being a BA, the approaches, I thought it was pretty similar. Like I mentioned before, when I was having a look at LinkedIn open positions, the outputs and the tasks, they were pretty similar to what I did back in Brazil, and eliciting and documenting requirements, maintaining relationships with the customers and with other teams as well. That was all very, very, very similar. And like you said, of course, each company has their own processes and outputs. So this can differ a little bit, but in general terms, there was not much of a big difference. And that was a positive thing for me because it wasn't a big shift from what I was used to do. But one thing that I can say is that in one of the companies that I worked back there, we used a technique called function point. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. And it's a technique used to measure the functional size of a software that we would develop. So we used this technique to measure how big the software was going to be, and then the company used this to say how much of that project cost and in how.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Would you own that process rather than a funky or a techie? That would be the BA that would document that?
Yes, that would be the BA. So, and in the company that I worked in, it had to be a BA that was they needed to have oh my God, I forgot the word. You had to go through an exam to be able to do this function point analysis. So it had to be someone cleared to do it. Of course, like I didn't go through this exam, but it was very hard, and it was not a lot of people that had this certification. And it can be very complex process, but it was something that the company used to be able to measure the projects. But it was the BA's responsibility, yes.
Did they use story points alongside that as well, Soane? Because it's kind of sounding like a similar thing, but for a different approach.
No. Like when you did this technique, it was in the very early stages of the project. So you would have like a high level idea of the requirements of the data structure that you needed to have. So it was up to a point where we didn't have user stories or use cases written yet.
Wow.
So it's kind of like that. I wasn't an expert of it, okay, but from what I can remember, like you would count how many new entities you were going to have, or how many existing entities you had to update, how many integrations, if you were internal integrations, external integrations. So all of this you would have to take in consideration.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when I was, again, going back to LinkedIn, when I was looking at the positions, I didn't see any companies that would require this kind of technique to be used. So I was like, okay, I don't need to do this there. Yeah.
And obviously, you came from very far away to come work in Dublin and to come work as a BA in Ireland. But and you just mentioned a large difference there in the type of activities that you have. But there's also differences I've noticed even across the Irish Sea with our UK team. Christina leads our UK practice, and even the way our UK BAs would document a user story using the Gherkin method would be different to what we see normally in Ireland, and that's only 45 minutes away in a plane, yet there's still a fundamental difference in how they document a requirement in the BA world. So yeah, it's not just you guys down there.
Yeah, good. That's true.
Is there any cultural differences that you feel impacted your BA activities when you moved?
Not really. Like, I think this is common sense across the Brazilian community here in Ireland, is that it's funny that the Irish personality or culture, it I can say that it's very similar to the Brazilian one in terms of being open to receiving people from the outside, or like creating and fostering these kind of relationships with everyone. You're walking in the street, and then you don't know that person that's crossing you, but they say, "Hi, how are you?" So that's really similar to us Brazilians, I think. So it wasn't like I didn't it wasn't hard for me to adapt, if I can say it that way. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, as Drew said, like even when you start to branch out and work with people from other countries or cultures where their work is a little bit different. I read a study somewhere about how people negotiate in different countries, and there's actually like graphs that go with it. Maybe you can paste a link in afterwards, but there's a graph that goes with it with how people engage. So like the level of conversation that happens up front, the engagement, the fighting, or the kind of negotiation point, and then the resolution. So it's interesting to see. I think Irish people have a real like block of negotiation, so we kind of elongate all of that. But our resolution seems to be kind of much further away. Whereas I think with French people or Swedish people, I think it was, their kind of politeness at the start of the conversation was elongated. The negotiation is quite fast paced, and the resolution is kind of directly after negotiation. So it's interesting to know. I think if you're going into a workshop or into a sales meeting with people who are maybe outside of the country that you're living in or the country that you're from, to understand a little bit about that, because it can come across as, maybe taking too much time, or it's too abrupt, or whatever it is, and it can feel a little bit different. So it's interesting to look into those things ahead of maybe engaging with people from other areas.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. Oh, sorry, Soane. I just
No,
want
go
to
ahead.
mention to Christina there. We've had conversations before about the differences in people down south and people up north, and customers are so quicker to get to a decision in the north, and they'd be way more comfortable being direct with you in negotiation, and there's a bit more of a dance sometimes down south, and that's like an hour and a half up the road, and you have that cultural difference.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Catherine and Drew, because it's something that we think about. For example, we have workshops all the time, and in Brazil, at least with my experience, we like to talk a lot of stuff outside of work. We like to bring in like, oh yeah, last week and I did this, I did that. And that's a great way of breaking the ice as well when you're going into a workshop. So we tend to, okay, yeah, we're starting the workshop, but let's take 5-10 minutes to talk about, stuff, not related to work anyway. And I was kind of like, it got me thinking, yeah, is this something that I can do there? I don't know. Like, do I go straight to business? Can I just ask how they are doing, what they did in the weekend? So yeah, it's whereas if you have other cultures, they go straight to the topic they want to discuss, no chitty chat, So yeah.
Thanks so much, Johnny. The next topic we want to talk to you then is, again, keeping on the practical side, is around the tools that we use, the tools that we'd use in our day job here in Ireland versus back home. And really wanted to dig in and see, was there major differences in the tools that you now use in your role here versus when you had started out?
It's funny because, my God, I've been almost 6 years here in Ireland, so it's a long time. Yeah. But when I was there in Brazil, we used to use a tool called Redmine. I don't know if it's popular here or no. Redmine, yeah, it's a tool to document. It's a project management tool, and we use to document requirements, user stories, project information, and it's somewhat similar. It has like similar functionality to what you see in Jira or even Azure DevOps. But it was the tool that we used back then. And in another company, we also used GitLab to document user stories and have the boards there. And so we use that. And what else? To document processes, we used Visio, which is what I use in here as well, and Balsamic to create wireframes. But I was talking to a few BA friends recently, and they mentioned that Jira and Azure DevOps, it's becoming really popular, more popular in Brazil, as well as Figma. So,
great.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, like maybe it's my, I don't know, naivety. I would have assumed that 90% of the tools we use are just used worldwide, and that's how BAs work. Never even heard of Redmine.
I know.
My ignorance. Gas. And even like yourself,
The great
Catherine,
thing
Christina,
is that even though,
sorry, go ahead. I guarantee what you're going to say is more
sorry.
interesting than what I was going to say.
This is what happens all the time. Drew just likes to talk over me, and
this is about me, my hour.
Sorry, I was just going to say that it's interesting that, like, I can imagine that would be really daunting going into an interview, and they maybe mention a platform that you've never heard of, and you don't know the layout of it. But I suppose it's good to know that if you can try and keep your cool in those situations and talk about what you do know, that 9 times out of 10 it's going to be transferable. And when you mention boards, backlog, epics, user stories, anything like that is still going to resonate with that person who's interviewing you. So I think it's important to know that if you are coming over and things don't seem exactly the same, that's also okay, and you're going to be bringing something new to the table as well.
Exactly, and that's like, it goes a lot of how you prep. Like, we could spend a whole podcast talking about how to prep for a job interview, but it goes a lot of how you do prepare. If that position is asking for you to use Jira and you never used Jira before, I'm sure you've used another tool that has similar functionality as Jira, so this is the kind of topics that you can bring. Like, I never used Jira before, but I know how to manage a board. I know how to manage backlogs. I know how to write user stories because I did this in this other tool, which is very similar. So, yeah.
The adaptability of business analysis. Love it. The next one we have here then, Soane, is easy. It's nice and broad, high level. It's a softball, okay? So what we wanted to know, if you were to give advice to somebody moving to Ireland or who's just moved here and they're starting on the journey that you've taken over the last 6 years, what advice would that be?
Go for it. Just go for it. Not because of the weather, okay? But
that's not a selling point.
But if you were like me, who wanted to experience living abroad and working abroad and getting to know other cultures and being able to work with all kinds of people, it sure is a great opportunity to get out of your comfort zone, of your bubble, and being able to experience all of that. Just make sure to research a lot about, the life in the country that you want to go, life in general, cost of living, accommodation, all of that, because I see a lot of people in the internet today trying to sell something that sometimes it's not real or is not 100% real. And, they trying to convince you at all costs that, oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. It's easy. And sometimes it's not like this. It can be very difficult until you get to a point where you want to be. So, just trying to minimize all the possible errors, researching a lot before you coming in, but it's definitely worth it. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. I would say that not everyone has, and I was very lucky to have this opportunity. So yeah.
And that's the part, Soane, you mentioned there, to make sure the thing is real. That's the thing that would scare me if our roles were reversed and I was going to go and live and work in Brazil. Like I wouldn't, like, obviously I think I know how to be safe online, but I wouldn't know how to research jobs and companies and locations and all of that to the point where I could get myself a job, I could move country, I could get accommodation. Like, you're told not to do all of those things at the one time. You're told that, like, if you're going to change jobs, make sure everything else is staying consistent, and then it's like when you're making a lifestyle change when it comes to like diet or exercise, you don't do it all at once. But when you are relocating, that is what you're doing, and that would scare the life out of me. And I mean, like, you've been able to do it successfully, but it was just, if I was to go to Brazil or Spain or somewhere else, I just wouldn't trust myself to do it.
Taking the steps to validate it, right? Like, you are well aware, I headhunted a colleague of ours from the Southern Hemisphere as well, actually. And I reached out to them through LinkedIn, and we'd started that conversation through LinkedIn, and we got to a job offer, had calls, and we had conversations, but all online. And essentially, I was just this guy that reached out to her on the internet and said, hey, come move here. And when she was telling her family and her friends about this, everyone else was like, red flag. Who's this guy? We're going to be kidnapped. It's an abduction. Like, so legitimately, it's a minefield, I guess. I didn't abduct her. She's healthy and safe. Happy.
She's no longer in Ireland, though.
No, she's not. She's left pretty fast. She didn't go far. But yeah, I suppose it's maybe getting third parties involved to validate that for you, reaching out to people from the organization who have public profiles that you can confirm.
So, Annie, did you have any sort of did you know anybody in Ireland that you had like a Brazilian community before you moved? Or
not at the point that I came here. So I had a friend. She was actually an inspiration for me because when we finished high school, and you were going to college and everything, but she took some time to do an exchange program, and she came here. And she fell in love with the country. Like, she was here in Dublin. She stayed here for, I think, around 8 or 9 months. And she said, when I went to the airport to go back home, I cried all the way back to Brazil because I wanted to stay in Ireland, but unfortunately she couldn't. And, years later, after I finished college, it was something that I always told my parents that I wanted to do. I wanted to live abroad. They never believed me anyway. But, so because she had come here, this was something that is stuck in my mind. And when it was time that I felt that I could do it, I started researching, and, Ireland was one of the countries that I was researching because of her. But at the time, like, I didn't know anyone in here, but it was easier for me because I came with my partner at the time. So, I had support in him, which I met loads of people, loads of Brazilians that came all by themselves. And like, this is so brave to do. Like, I don't think if I would be able to do, just come alone. But yeah, there's so many brave people that come without knowing anyone, and with just the courage, that they have. So it's very impressive.
So you can't even come to Belfast without Catherine.
Yeah. That's because I've been going there for years and I still get lost, like, every time. cannot make my way around that tiny little city. Like,
You just
my
have to
brain
find the big fish. That's the most important landmark is the big blue fish.
without any context, or if you're not from Northern Ireland, that makes absolutely no sense, and I love it.
But can I say something? Can I tell something funny? When we were still in Brazil, but we had already agreed with the English school that we were gonna study here. And then me and my partner were like, yeah, let's look in like Google Maps, that you can see like the street view. Let's look at the street view of the school to see if it's in a nice neighborhood and all of that. And then we put the location on the school where it was. And then we are looking around, and in front of the school there was like a wall, and in the wall was painted like Brazilian caipirinha on Thursdays, and I was like, what? And there was like painted like the World Cup trophy with Brazilian colors. I'm like, where is this? Is this in Ireland? Like, yeah, but it turned
Oh, well,
out
that's
it
a
was.
sign.
Yeah, no, it was a pub, and in a few days of the week they had like Brazilian nights, and it was across the school that I was going to study. I'm like, my God, am I really leaving Brazil?
That's so funny.
That's so nice.
Gosh. So we spent some time talking about how great it is here. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about, well, back home, I suppose. Could you talk to us about maybe what BAs do back home that you wish that we did here? So what are we missing?
Going to the beach for sure.
Oh, stop
No, seriously. Like again, in terms of BA tasks and BA work, I don't think I miss anything. But what I do miss is that when it was, Brigadeiro, yeah. But when it was someone's birthday, for example, and everyone, not only BAs, but everyone in the office, we would go out to a nice place, nice restaurant, and have lunch together to celebrate that person's birthday. And it was like a given, it was not even something that happened, sporadically. It was always someone's birthday. You already know that you're having, a nice time out having lunch. But I do get it that, after COVID, you have people living across, scattered across the country. So it's not always easy to have something like this. But yeah, it's something that I miss. Yeah.
So Annie, you're being very kind and not mentioning a football team there, which I think.
I know.
I'm not allowed to talk about football, Soane, anymore.
No.
Make me too sad.
Good weather, good football. Good.
I know. I try to, think about work, but yeah.
Actually, why are you here?
Oh, don't get me started with this, Drew.
And then the last one we have for you, we wanted to know, difficult to probably narrow it down to one thing, but could you tell us and the people watching and listening what you think might be the best thing about BA life in Ireland?
I would definitely say the flexibility, at least with the my experience. Yeah, so I remember back in Brazil stressing so much about having to clock in and clock out every day, and counting the minutes and the seconds, and having someone on your back like, did you clock in, did you clock out, and the time that you were supposed to. So you were kind of like, it left you feeling that you were being micromanaged somehow, which I hate. And like you couldn't be trusted that you were actually doing the work and the time that you're supposed to. So it's a big difference here, because where I work, we don't have to do it. I'm sure there are companies where you have to, but where I work today, we don't have to. So there's this kind of flexibility there of knowing how to manage my own time, as long as it doesn't impact the project and the team and the customers. But also, I think the way that you're recognized, back in Brazil, I worked for 5 5 years, yes, for the same company, and I was still a junior BA, so it was hard to get and to see that career progression within the same company. And the only time that I got an offer to move to have this career progression was when I received an offer from a different company, which it's not something that you want. You want to be recognized by the work that you're doing there and then, and this is something that I noticed as a big difference. And it improved with my being a BA here in Ireland, that in the company that I am, I've been recognized multiple times. I was able to progress in my BA career multiple times, not only once. And I've been in this company for 3.5 years now. So it's a big, really big difference when you stop to compare.
That's really interesting.
It's kind of sad though that you weren't given the opportunity to progress, and I suppose where all the familiar things are for you, like if you have family, friends, everything back in Brazil, but you weren't able to crack that and have progression opportunities, and you come to, I suppose, a country full of strangers, and you're recognized, very quickly.
Exactly.
So it's kind of sad. It's kind of unfortunate, but we're glad because now you're here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know. It is very sad, especially because you see other BAs being hired and they are more progressed than you, but at the end of the day, you're doing the same work as they are doing, and sometimes even better, so you start to question yourself, and that imposter syndrome came full on, am I doing something wrong? Is there something missing? And why I'm not getting there while other people are, I'm sure it's not everywhere. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sure it's not everywhere that happens this, but this was, the experience that I had. Yeah.
Well, I am delighted you're here. You decided to come here and you decided to stay.
Good.
Do we have any more questions for Soane before she's released?
Released into the wild. No, I'm all good. Thank you so much for joining us, Soane.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Thank you so much. Before we wrap up officially, I want to thank my co-hosts too for being here. Christina, thank you. Catherine, thank you. Soane, we appreciate it so much. Thank you. That's us. We'll see you again next time. And in the meantime, please comment below. Tell us what your advice is for someone emigrating for the career. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? That's okay too. Do you have insight from your own experience? Tell us in the comments. And if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to write for the BA project, learn more about what we do, or just get a steer on how to get started as a BA, you can find us at thebaproject.ie or simply at the BA Project across all social media. Thanks for watching and take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Thanks.